A player who loses her bras during a match has a fighter who scares his opponent, another who does yoga at the end of the fight, or a ring girl with wandering eyes. Make yourself comfortable. Here are some inappropriate moments in MMA and Boxing. In an MMA fight, American Brandy Halsey was fighting his Czech opponent Yuri Prochazka in a very important tournament. But within the first 5 minutes of the round, the American boxer was surprised and confused by the extraordinary strength of his rival. Indeed, barely had he had time to warm up that Yuri Prochazka had beaten him and put him down. Then the American tried to make up for it by throwing himself on his opponent and tackling him against the ring's border. Except that he ended up losing his balance and falling, which put him in a weak position once again. Then, fearing to be beaten by the Czech, he decided to run away and go out through the ropes. Small problem, he didn't plan to fall out of the ring and break his back. The poor Halsey let his back really hurt. Just to see him grimace with pain, it's to wonder if he wouldn't have been better off letting his rival hit him. At the same time, it will teach him that we're a fight. It's still a bit cowardly. He has to learn to take his fights to the end, even when his opponent is stronger than him. Here, boxer Johnny Walker was fighting his opponent Ryan Spann in a UFC match. The man had vowed that day to defeat his rival at all costs and knock him out in less than 2 rounds, so he gathered all his strength to pummel him. And in the second minute of the round, his American opponent was already knocked out, collapsed on the mat. A well-deserved victory. So to celebrate it, as it should be, Johnny Walker pulled out all the stops and decided to improvise a little scene in front of the cameras. The player sat on the mat, crossed his legs, and put himself in the lotus position, as if doing yoga during a boxing match. Don't you find this paradoxical? In any case, not for Johnny Walker, who visibly needed this time of rest to recover and at the same time to act smart in front of the public. Indeed, the fighter was so exhausted after having put all his strength in his round that this moment of zenitude and this micro-yoga session were necessary for him to be able to resume the rest of the match in good conditions. In an MMA match, Australian boxer Justin Tafa was fighting his Moroccan opponent Jamal Ben Sadiq, except that in the second minute of the round, Tafa had a small technical accident. Indeed, while receiving from the Moroccan a kick in the direction of his intimate parts, the protective shell came off and fell. The player had to stop the fight to readjust it. Unfortunately, the shell could not be put back in because the rope holding it had torn. He had to resume the match without a protective shell, which made him very unsettled. This incident disturbed him a bit, so much so that it even impacted his mental state. Because of this, the player ended up losing to Ben Sadiq, and the way he handled it, I don't think he'd want to step in the ring again. This pretty fighter with colorful hair was fighting her opponent in the ring, and she was pretty well on her way to winning her match. At one point, she will throw her rival to the ground and want to senate her with punches. But something will stop her and stop her dead in her tracks. In a run, her bra, or the top of her shirt so to speak, accidentally broke off because it got caught in her opponent's stockings. The worst part was that it had unraveled on the front, which would obviously reveal her full breast to the thousands of spectators. Feeling that this bra had loosened, the fighter immediately stopped the game to prevent her breast from being seen by everyone. Fortunately, she was able to put it back on, narrowly avoiding a monumental embarrassment. And since that game, she only plays with the traditional elastic bras that have no chance of getting scratched. In this sequence, this boxer who had just finished his match was waiting in the ring for his score to be displayed on the screen. Once the score was displayed and the man was declared the winner, he was naturally carried away by an immeasurable joy. As a sign of victory, he threw his arm from the left to the right, but as he did so, the boxing glove, or so to speak, the punch, landed right on the face of the man who was crossing the ring at the same time. Unfortunately, he didn't realize it until after the poor guy ended up with a dented face. Let's hope that the latter didn't want to take his revenge in the locker room, because a blow like that is not easy to accuse. In any case, it was the last time he made this victory sign. It seems that since then, to celebrate his victory, he has switched to the classic V with the index and middle fingers. This fighter, even with his ordinary appearance, had to fight a strong opponent. Well, he was ordinary until his opponent entered the ring. You can see why we said a strong opponent. The fighter suddenly became very small next to his giant rival. And the worst thing is that the latter had no mercy for him. Thinking that he still had a chance, the player launched a series of wild punches in the direction of his opponent, who did not need more than to put his hand on the head of his rival to stop him and prevent him from touching. Indeed, the giant's arms were so long that the little fighter couldn't reach him, which made his punches go in the void. He then decided to change tactics and go after his legs in order to throw him off balance and make him fall. But again, the giant seized the opportunity to lift his opponent by the waist and turn him around. Throughout the match, the giant made no effort to fight other than trying to avoid his opponent's crummy punches. The poor guy had the most miserable and humiliating match of his life. He came out of it all washed up and without having been able to land a single punch against his rival. It would not be surprising if he decided to change his career. In this sequence, a ring girl was in the ring, signs in hand. She was marching with the score of the first round. But too busy doing the show, she didn't notice that the sign was upside down and that the number 1 was upside down. Passing near her, the referee, annoyed, could not resist and violently tore the sign from the hands of the young woman to return it to her in a brutal way. Very embarrassed, the young woman did not know where to put herself. She had only one thing to do. She had to get it right. This will be a lesson for her next time. It's not a very difficult thing to do to hold up a sign, but you can feel it. This young woman with the blue shirt has for the job to accompany the fighters of the UFC during their weigh-in, a job she has always dreamed of doing. And we know the reason. We also know the reason because this woman does nothing to hide it. Indeed, every time a player goes up on the platform to undergo the usual pre-game weigh-in, the young woman standing behind cannot help but look, detail, observe greedily worse, do that mouth mime and that stunned look, screaming with amazement as soon as she sees the perfectly defined and drawn muscles and abs on the athletes' bodies. She doesn't do it once in a while, she does it every time a player strips down, which, by dint of it, has ended up labeling her as the woman who would dream of jumping on every boxer that walks by. I don't know if she still does it to this day, but I'm sure if she saw the videos, she would want to change jobs, do something away from the cameras. Clean the players' locker rooms, for example. This bearded man was with other fighters on the stage. He had just finished a boxing tournament and the man had to stand for the entire medal ceremony, except that the medals were going to be handed over by a pretty girl in a bikini, which was obviously a concern for our friend. Indeed, the beautiful woman in a bikini holding the tray of medals in her hand scrolled and stopped at each player at the time he received his medal. The fighter, seeing his turn coming and the girl was approaching him, first tried to look down. Then once the latter arrived at his level and he received his medal, he immediately lowered his beret on his face so that would covers him, the eyes, and that he was not forced to see the almost naked woman. For him, it was the only way for his eyes not to cross the cleavage of the sexy girl. Even if this gesture made the scene ridiculous and caused a lot of mockery, he would have won a medal and kept his wife. Moreover, in this sequence, this pretty girl was accompanied by other ringers. She was supposed to do a little number and be beautiful in front of the cameras before the game started. Except that, unluckily, while everyone had their eyes on her, our friend made a faux pas. She sprained her ankle and ended up on the ground. She had just taken the mother of falls of her life in front of thousands of spectators. The worst thing is that more than she refused to assume what had just happened to her, she tried to make up the fall in choreography. The young woman then started to improvise a small twerk to cloud the issue. Except that her issue was unfortunately too big, and her fall even bigger. She ended up leaving the ring with a fake smile, translating her desire to leave this profession forever. You're used to seeing sparring matches between different opponents, but I'm sure you've never seen a match between two fighters from different disciplines before. Today, we propose you to see what it looks like. Get ready to witness the amazing fight between a female karate champion and a street boxer. For the first time in history of this martial arts fighting club, there was a fight between Martin Dudas, a boxer and street fighter, and a woman, the karate champion Lucia Kovasakova. Of course, during this full contact fight out of the norm, the two fighters had to face each other freely, without having to follow any rule or almost. She dressed in a kimono, he in boxing shorts. Each one tried to defeat the other by using different techniques and means. Lucia Kovasakova is lighter and more flexible because of her discipline. But he is a man. He is therefore more muscular, heavier, and taller, so more difficult to put a KO. The fight is really incredible, but it is very long. So if you want to know who won, you'll have to spend the night. Well, okay, we're nice, we'll tell you. There was no winner in this fight because both of them are tough and very strong. And since the match lasted so long, the time limit was exceeded, and we had to end it. So I didn't tell you that you would be surprised by this unusual fight. So what do you think of these sequences? Which one made you laugh the most? Tell us what you think in the comments. And if you like this video, don't forget to put a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all the notifications and not miss anything for our next contents.